The bourgeoisie, historically, has played a most revolutionary part. The bourgeoisie, wherever it has got the upper hand, has put an end to all feudal, patriarchal, idyllic relations. It has pitilessly torn asunder the motley feudal ties that bound man to his natural superiors, and has left remaining no other nexus between man and man than naked self-interest, than callous cash payment. It has drowned the most heavenly ecstasies of religious fervor, of chivalrous enthusiasm, of Philistine sentimentalism in the icy waters of egotistical calculation. It has resolved personal worth into exchange value, and in place of the numberless, indefensible chartered freedoms, has set up that single unconscionable freedom, free trade. In one word, for exploitation, veiled by religious and political illusions, it has substituted naked, shameless, direct, brutal exploitation. He's talking about how under feudalism and the time of kings and queens and princes and, nobles and peasants and serfs and knights and castles, all the social hierarchies were dressed up in all this magic, right? The Catholic Church, the monks and the priests and the Vatican, they dressed up all of the social hierarchies where some people got to be in charge and some people got all up in this magical, idyllic, patriarchal language, right? The king was ordained by God to rule as the sovereign of the nation, right? The peasants, the peasants were placed upon the land under the care of the noble. There was a knight and his squire, and everything under feudalism was dressed up in this magical, religious, sentimental value. And when capitalism emerged and overturned feudalism, it ripped all of that to shreds. Capitalism was purely about making money. And it ripped apart all these idyllic, religious, sentimental, idealist myths that held society together. And that's a role that capitalism plays. And Marx is, in a way, praising capitalism, because capitalism has been very revolutionary in ripping apart the restraints on science, ripping apart the restraints on human productivity, allowing people to invent new products. And that, capitalism, as it emerged in the aftermath of feudalism, as feudalism was destroyed by emerging capitalism, it ripped apart a lot of the deeply embedded traditional cultures and social hierarchies that held feudal society together. And that's what Marx is pointing out. And he goes on. The bourgeoisie has stripped of its halo every occupation hitherto honored and looked upon with reverent awe. It has converted the physician, the lawyer, the priest, the poet, the man of science into paid wage laborers. Meaning that, it used to be to be a doctor was this very honorable thing, and now healthcare is all about making money. It used to be that, those who knew the law and practiced the legal profession was this very honorable thing. Now lawyers, everyone knows lawyers lie, it's corrupt, it's all about making money. Religion, poetry, art, the man of the sciences, right? All of this is reduced to being about making money. Those who have the gold make the rules, and the sacredness and the honor and the respect that these things used to have just gets ripped apart. Capitalism is about, as Karl Marx said, leaving no remaining nexus between man and man than naked self-interest and callous cash payment. And that's the problem of capitalism. That capitalism is a system that reduces everything to profits and command, where wealth and money comes before everything. And all of the feelings of community, the feelings of value, the mystical religious feelings people have, they all just kind of get torn apart. And he goes on. The bourgeoisie is torn away from the family, its sentimental veil, and reduced family relations to mere money relation. How many divorces are about money, right? There you go. The bourgeoisie has disclosed how it came to pass that the brutal display of vigor in the Middle Ages which reactionaries so much admire, found its fitting complement in the most slothful indolence. It is first to show what man's activity can bring about. It has accomplished wonders far surpassing the Egyptian pyramids, the Roman aqueducts, and the Gothic cathedrals. It has conducted expeditions that put in the shade all former exoduses of nations and crusades. He's talking about how it unleashed productivity. As capitalism developed, the productive forces increased, the amount of wealth in society increased, the ability to produce goods and products increased it. Capitalism resulted in huge technological advances. Huge technological advances. But at the same time that we were technologically advancing, we had steam engines, we had electricity, we were losing our souls. People talk about Frankenstein. I don't know if you ever read Frankenstein. Frankenstein is this novel written by Mary Shelley about a scientist who does something that's never been done before. He makes a man. He assembles a bunch of body parts and he makes a human being synthetically. He makes a man. But this person he creates out of nothing, he doesn't give them any love. He doesn't give them any affection. And so they become a monster that terrorizes the world. Terrorizes the world. Terrorizes the world. And Mary Shelley was commenting about how it seemed like as capitalism was advancing and new technological and scientific breakthroughs were coming along, on some level, humanity was losing its soul. Humanity was losing the ability to care. People didn't care about each other. People's ability to connect to each other was being lost. Human empathy was being lost. A sense of values and right and wrong was being lost, right? And Marx, even though Marx sees the feudal system as full of hypocrisy, he's mourning that. He's mourning the decline of these old myths because he's seeing that capitalism is replacing it with, hey, self-interest, callous cash payment, right? This is Marx. He almost sounds like a conservative in a way because he's showing how the values of the old society are being ripped apart. Marx is critiquing liberalism, right? Liberalism is the ideology that says the individual before all else, right? That the highest, the most important thing is the individual, breaking down any connection between people, breaking people down into atomized individuals so they can be good consumers, so they can be oppressed as workers, more easily exploited. That's Marx. And he's doing a great job of showing us how capitalism made relationships of exploitation and inequality much more blatant. I own the factory, you work in it. I pay you to work here. If you don't like it, go get another job. I can pay you what I want. Oh, you don't like what I'm paying you? Well, go somewhere else. All the mystical chivalry, all the sense of morality and obligation, all of that is ripped apart. That's a really big, important part of Marxism. That's a really, really important part of Marxism. Marx, he's in a way, right? He's saying here he's not a reactionary, but he's saying that it has disclosed how the brutal display of vigor in the Middle Ages, which reactionaries, he's not one, admire so much, found its fitting complement in slothful indolence. And it's first to show what man's activity can really bring about. Even though in the Middle Ages, the knights and the castles, they were all talking about, oh, we're going to go out and fight. There was a lot of laziness, right? Among the nobles, among the rich people, they just sat around. They just enjoyed themselves, right? But now with capitalism, suddenly technology is advancing. Suddenly they're producing more than they've ever produced before. But he goes on, the bourgeoisie cannot exist without constantly revolutionizing the instruments of production and thereby the relations of production, and with them, the whole relations of society.